All right, it is that time once again. It is Sunday, March 21st, and that means normally it would be the end of the second round, but you know what? In this crazy year, it means it's the beginning of the round of 32 in the NCAA Tournament, and we are here at Awesemo.com to break it all down. We've got an hour. I am Ben Rasa. That is Matt Gajewski. We had some wild games. We had 16 of them yesterday that we broke down as I'm not muted here, and now we're going to dive in to the 8 games today. How are you, my friend? Did you enjoy all the basketball yesterday?
I did. Yesterday was fantastic outside of Creighton.
Yes.
You and I were on some hot upsets. A lot of really fun games. Colorado should have been favored by 100 points.
Correct.
But you could get that game at 5. So it was a very exciting day. Very much looking forward to what today has to offer.
Yeah, it honestly, it started well. Colorado was huge for both of us. Crushed them, and for me it ended just, I've never rooted for a team as if they were my own son. I have no kids, but Abilene Christian feels like my child. What a game. I have never been so excited. What clutch free throws. Just an incredible tournament game, one I'll remember for a very long time.
That's how I feel about Oral Roberts, man.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to them today, and I have a lot to say about that game. Before I do, though, I have a lot to say about our friends at Monkey Knife Fight, who is sponsoring the show once again. As I've talked about, their player props contests, easy to play, don't require the time commitment that the other DFS sites require in order to be very competitive. And it's not just one sport, whether you play NBA, UFC, PGA, esports, soccer, all those things are available over at Monkey Knife Fight. Simply go to monkeyknifefight.com, choose what game you want to play, the contest type, your buy-in, and use that promo code Awesemo. You get an instant first match deposit bonus of up to $50. Definitely go check that out. Chat, it's good to see everyone here again. Hit that like button. Let's get these likes up right from the beginning. We've got 8 games. I don't really, I'm not going to lie. I didn't love the schedule. I wish they kind of tweaked it, but you know what? We're going to do what we got to do. Loyola and Illinois is the first game, and that's where we're going to start. This is going to be, I think, a potentially serious battle here. And you know what? No, we're going the other way. I was going to start with Loyola by the times. We're starting with Wisconsin and Baylor. We're going from top to bottom. Executive decision. Jordan Klein's already ahead of the game. We'll talk about your boys. First question, are you sporting a Baylor shirt? All right, that question has been answered. Looks like you're rooting against your boys. Wisconsin 6.5 point underdogs here, 137.5 total. They walloped North Carolina. It was not close. Baylor didn't have a real game. They crushed Hartford, but they really weren't showing much. Now we get a real second round matchup here. Let's start with Wisconsin. It's been a pain point for you all year with the coaching. What did you think about their first round performance, and what do you think about their chances here?
I was a little surprised by their first round performance, obviously fueled by the 29-point performance from Brad Davison himself, the single best game of his individual 9-year career at Wisconsin.
9 year, yep.
Yeah, so I was very surprised by that. I had tickets on UNC, so it wasn't a profitable game for me in particular. But going forward, I think you get an overrated Wisconsin team with a pretty weak line here on Baylor's side. It's moved up to -6.5, but I took this at -6 immediately when I could get the chance to. Wisconsin, outside of the game they just played against North Carolina, has only beaten 3 teams since January. They're Northwestern, Penn State, and Nebraska, the weakest competition you're possibly going to find in the Big Ten. Wisconsin's also dropped games to teams like Marquette this year. So seeing Baylor as just a 6.5 point favorite here was shocking. As far as DFS goes, you get an egregious price on Brad Davison today after what was literally the best game of his career.
So yeah, I assume that you're not looking to go right back to that.
I don't know if I've ever played Brad Davison in DFS.
And you're not starting today?
No, I'm not.
No. What about someone like Trice? His price did not move. Played, he's going to play a hefty 35 plus minutes in this spot. Can he pay off that tag, or is it more just a product of this spot, as a Wisconsin team, maybe a little overinflated in general, going up against a Baylor team who's, maybe not flying under the radar, but poised for a big spot?
I do view the game that way, but Trice's price is actually pretty nice. It's decent on DraftKings at 6,700. FanDuel, he's even cheaper. He has a solid usage rate. It's 19%, and he's going to play the most minutes on this team. I don't think there's a huge ceiling with players like Trice, just because Wisconsin is a team that plays very slow. They're going to limit possessions for the opposing team. So what kind of ceiling do you really have there unless Trice ends up taking an anomaly shot game or something like that? So at 6,700, I think there's better values, but I won't rule out Trice.
on the other side, we talked about, you're not going to take much from a 79-55 win against Hartford. That game didn't really mean much. They were in full control. They did not show much because they didn't have to. But, we've still got, of course, the Baylor studs relatively at the same price. Butler dropped $200. He's still at $8,700. And let's start there. I mean, they've got a ton of depth in this backcourt. Do you look to pay up with one of these Baylor players in a game like this, or is the Wisconsin pace still something that seriously concerns you?
That's exactly it. It is entirely the Wisconsin pace. And we still have an 8-game slate. So for DFS, paying $8,700 for a guy like Jared Butler when there's just other alternatives is pretty tough for me. And the same thing goes with Teague and Davion Mitchell, who are a little bit less expensive, but you're still talking about a price tag north of $7K for both players. Both of them are going to cede a little bit of usage to Butler as well. So it's not a spot where I really see myself paying up for Baylor studs.
It's going to be an interesting stylistic matchup because I'm not exactly sure what Baylor is going to want to do. I mean, they have the talent advantage, and I do think ultimately they look good in this spot. But what about, the non-Jared Butler players for this team? They've got a lot of them. Is there a priority list when you look at Mitchell, Teague, Vital, Mayer? They've got a lot of guys that contribute.
I think for Vital down at 5,200, he played 11 minutes in their last game. That was because of foul trouble that he got into immediately. He's typically going to play 25 to 30 minutes on any given day, and they'll need him against Wisconsin's front court. So Potter is a strong player, and they also have Nate Reavers in there, Tyler Wall. I don't think any of them individually are stud players, but Wisconsin as a team has been pretty efficient this year, so they'll need Vital to play a full role. So hopefully he doesn't foul out, but he's the cheapest player I'm really willing to get to on Baylor.
So that means, obviously by process, you're not looking at the other forwards, whether it's Thamba or I'm not going to even pretend to announce. How do you say
Jordan Chamwich Chua?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Both hovering around 4K. Any look to there, or just the minutes not secure?
Yeah, they'll both play 20 minutes.
So you are comfortable, just to kind of wrap this game up, you think that Baylor is not relatively tested here in any meaningful way?
Tested, maybe not the good word, but I think they pretty easily cover the 6.5. I again have this at 6. Wisconsin, they will slow the pace here, but they haven't shown a willingness to really stop anybody. North Carolina is a terrible shooting team. They shoot sub 70% from the free throw line. Caleb Love, who takes the most shots on their team, shoots 26% from three. Baylor is arguably the best 3-point shooting team in the country. So it's just a very different type game here for Wisconsin.
No doubt about that. Baylor all year has shot it fantastic. They've got a lot of guys who can shoot it. You had to take one last shot at for Caleb Love before the season closes. It's just always, Baylor 41% from three. That's ridiculous. All right, let's keep it moving. The winner of this game, we've got they'll take on North Texas, the 13 seed, or the 5 seed Villanova. Purdue was bounced in overtime by North Texas. I mean, we could do a whole show on that. The Mean Green 5.5 point underdogs here, 126.5 point total. Let's start with them. Impressive. I give them credit. They were able to limit Williams on the inside. I don't really understand Purdue in a lot of ways, but you have to give this team credit. What do you make of them here? Clearly they want to slow the pace. Hamlet played basically the whole game, 43 minutes. He is certainly the guy who's priced up the highest. Is he the guy that you have the most interest in?
For sure. 7,700 is a fair price tag for him on DraftKings. Elite usage rate, and he's involved everywhere on the court. So he's going to play every single minute. He's played at least 37 and 3 straight. He's accounted for 31% of their shots, 26% of the rebounds, and just an absurd 42% of the assists. So Hamlet's playing a lot of hero ball out there. He does get a tougher matchup against Villanova. It's not the same Villanova defense we've seen in the past, but this team overall likes to slow the pace. They both really do, playing below average possessions per game for both of them. So I think the question is, with the 127 total, would you rather have Hamlet, who's this usage stud in a less than ideal game environment? Would you rather play somebody in a better game environment that maybe has a lesser usage rate? And I tend to lean towards the latter.
Looking outside of Hamlet, I mean, they do have some other players, whether it's Simmons, Reese, these guys could log major minutes, certainly Bell as well. Are there any secondary options on North Texas, or is this a situation where it's really Hamlet and then a wide gap to everybody else?
They do run a narrow rotation, so it's a tight distribution of minutes. For that reason, I think you might look at some people. They're going to need to have Zachary Simmons on the floor, I think, because he's the only player with any legitimate size on this North Texas team, and he'll be tasked with stopping Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Not an easy task by any means, but he's very cheap at 5,100. There's also Mardrez McBride at 46. He's played 40 and 37 minutes in back-to-back games, and he's actually been fairly involved, taking 15% of the shots in their last 3. So as a pure value play, I don't hate McBride, but I'm probably limiting my North Texas exposure to one player just due to the total.
Yeah, McBride, I mean, credit to him. He's been doing this, but he is shooting a ridiculous clip from 3 over the past month or so. Really efficient in the conference tournament and kept it going against Purdue. He was 4 for 6. You're going to need that once again. Not to say it can't be done, but I really respect Villanova's defense. Clearly, they're not a serious threat, but I like what they're doing. Certainly, they always lean on that offense in the 3, but their D has been better than I thought it would, and it showed against Winthrop. Even though that game was somewhat close at times, it felt like, to me, Villanova was in full control. They limited Vaudrin. Robinson Earl is fantastic, and let's start with him. He's $8,800. He did everything against Winthrop, 38 minutes, 22 points, 11 boards, 6 assists, three blocks, and a steal. Do you expect more of the same in this matchup?
They're going to have to continue using him. Without Gillespie, he's the engine of this offense, and he draws a nice matchup. Again, Zachary Simmons is the only player with size. If Simmons gets in foul trouble or anything like that, it's just going to be an absolute disaster for North Texas. Jeremiah Robinson Earl holds a huge talent advantage over any of the bigs really on this North Texas team. And you already spoke to the rates. I mean, they've just been absurd since Gillespie went out. 27% of the shots, over 30% of the rebounds, and then 25% of the assists for Jeremiah Robinson Earl. There's maybe a little bit of foul threat, but ultimately he's going to play the entire game if he's not in foul trouble.
Yeah, and they're going to need, I mean, again, a competitive game, they need him. The other guy that they do need, and he's, certainly looks good to go from what was the injury, the ankle issue. Justin Moore played 37 minutes, not efficient, 5 of 13, but he's getting a lot of usage. He's sub 6K at 5,900. Is he someone that you think you could look to if you don't want to pay all the way up?
I think he actually might be the best play in this game just because of his role on the team. So people, they like to think of Justin Moore as, this ancillary player, but he actually has a good usage rate. It's almost 18%. And that's during the time where Gillespie was on the floor. So now we saw him play 37 minutes. He was injured during their conference tournament. So you're getting him back a little healthier in the 37-minute show that. Then you already had a player who was involved prior to the Gillespie injury. I think the usage rate can only increase for him. So at 5,900, I would rather pay that price tag for Moore in this bad game environment than go all the way up to JRE.
I'm with you. I think that Moore is primed to be very active in this game. Certainly shoots. 126.5 total, of course, isn't the best. It's the lowest on the slate of the 8 games. But you know what? There still can be some value here in a game like this. I am not betting this game. I really don't know what to make of North Texas, to be honest. I thought they were very fortunate to make the tournament. I thought that Purdue's bigs would punish them. That didn't happen. I think Villanova probably gets it done, but the spread to me feels about right.
I think so too. It's not a game where I bet the spread, and I took quite a bit of bets today.
And they didn't make the cut?
They didn't make the cut.
They didn't make the cut. Yeah, I did not either. Don't worry, Jordan Klein. We got you. We got bets on bets on bets.
Jordan Klein, take Baylor.
Yeah, take Baylor is right. Take Abilene Christian yesterday, my friend. We're going to have some good ones.
On your recommendation.
That's right. God. And, credit to Ohio. That was a game I did like them, but the spread torpedoed Preston. We don't need to get into that, but I thought it was interesting the way Preston played. He really kind of managed the game without taking a ton of shots, but that is neither here nor there. Let's move it on. This is, to me, the most surprising. When you see the matchups on Friday, the winners, you kind of, at least I do this, I'm sure a lot of people do. I think about, okay, what do I think the spreads are going to be? Some of the games, Illinois, Loyola, a couple others, I was right in the ballpark. I thought Arkansas would be not a sizable favorite, but a clear favorite in this next game, but that is not the case. Texas Tech is actually a 1.5 point favorite over the 3 seed in Arkansas, 140.5 total. And to me, I'm a little surprised. Yes, they did look good, and I was impressed against them against Utah State. Arkansas started slow against Colgate, but then they turned it on and they won that game very comfortably, ultimately. So let's start with this Texas Tech team. I mean, you've got to be impressed. Chris Beard is phenomenal. I'm not arguing that. But where do you look at this team as a 6 seed being the favorite in this spot?
I was very surprised to see this. Even in their matchup against Utah State, we saw money just pouring in on Utah State. The line opened around 6.5 in that game, and it finished -4. Now in this spot, you had Arkansas open as a 1-point dog, and the line's moving against them. So you see now they're sitting at +1.5. I bet Arkansas immediately at +1, expecting the line to move the other direction. So I'm likely going to take this again if Texas Tech continues to get steam. Like you, I was very surprised to see the Red Raiders favored in this spot. The total 141 is not something I have as much interest in, but possibly for DFS, Texas Tech draws a nice pace up spot because Arkansas plays at just an incredible pace.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, we saw that this is not like Colgate where both teams want to do it, but I think Arkansas can win out kind of in that tempo game and make Texas Tech open it up a little bit. Now, who does that benefit? Is it Edwards? Is it McCullough? Is it just the team in general? Because this is a team, to me, that's more balanced than having one guy that's really going to just completely soak up all the usage.
They really are. Mcclung was kind of that player earlier in the season, but his role's been reduced a little bit. He's just not shooting the ball very well lately. He's still taking 21.5% of the shots, and he does lead the team in usage. So if you're buying low on Mcclung, 5,800, it's basically his season low in price. You actually saw him up north of 8K at times this year. A little worried about his role. They reduced his minutes slightly, but he still played at least 30 in 2 of the last 3 games. So I think Mcclung is maybe a buy low. They've been starting Terrence Shannon recently, and he also has a solid usage rate, now taking 19% of the shots in the last 3. Those two are both 5,800 on DraftKings, which I think is the best price to play. Right now, Kyler Edwards is basically at his season high price, and he's just been shooting lights out. But at the same time, Kyler Edwards has shown over a longer sample that he's not quite as involved as players like Mcclung and Terrence Shannon.
I wish Mcclung distributed at all. He just is like really just not, that's not his game. To get there, he needs a lot of real raw points. He's got to score probably 20 plus actual points in the game. Can he do it? Absolutely. Just a different type of path. And yeah, I was with you. I bet Utah State in that game as it came down, and Texas Tech just, they really controlled it. They were able to survive what I thought would be a serious disadvantage in the front court. And I was impressed, but this is just, I don't know. I'm with you. I'm going to be on Arkansas in this spot. I mean, when you look at the game as a whole, what ultimately do you think will be the difference? Is it just Arkansas from a talent standpoint? Will they manufacture points easier? How do you really see it unfolding?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We were talking about that Texas Tech Utah State matchup as two teams that had really struggled at times during the year. Like Texas Tech went 9-8 during conference play. They've lost a lot of games, and some of them weren't very close. As far as the talent gap, I do think you have an edge towards Arkansas. And we saw them play an interesting game against Colgate. It's a game where Moody got in foul trouble early. He still ended up playing 35 minutes. And then you had another guy, Jalen Williams, who we talked about a lot, someone who missed the conference tournament, a big piece to this Arkansas team. And he's actually the only player that they put on the court that really possesses that truly elite size. He gets in foul trouble in their most recent game, his debut coming back from injury, and he only plays 5 minutes. He's a big, I think, asset to Arkansas in this spot because Texas Tech is a team that doesn't have any size. So if he can get out there and even play 20 minutes a game, it should really help them. But then a player like Moses Moody, you can really buy low on him in this spot after he just kind of had a dud game in the first spot.
Inversely, what do you make of Justin Smith, who was great, but he also had 5 steals and 2 blocks in that game against Colgate?
I love Justin Smith. You're buying high on him after you just noted it. He had an amazing game. He is extremely used, though. He has a 23% shot rate last 3. He has a 26.5% rebound rate and a 15% assist rate. So he's even involved in the periphery. You mentioned steals, blocks. He does it everywhere. He will play 40 minutes if he's not in foul trouble. But at the same time, he's 8,600 when you can take Moody, who's going to be a very similar player at a cheaper price.
Yeah, I mean, Smith's price, rightfully so, has come up, but I mean, you're talking about big jumps. A couple of games ago, he was 6,800 against LSU. He's taken $900 incremental jumps. That does crush some of the value. Anything else from Arkansas, whether it's Tate or Note or Davis, or is it just really just a pretty good environment for the team as a whole?
Note is going to take 100 shots.
Correct.
This guy just shoots it every time he gets the ball. He's very good at it, don't get me wrong. And I mean, he has a 22.5% usage rate. But now you're also seeing Note at a season high price. It's really the story with Arkansas where you have Note and Justin Smith very expensive. And then you can buy low on players like Moody. Devontae Davis didn't see his price change a ton, but he's now north of 6K, which is a bit rich for him. So I'm really just isolating Moody here. But pace up spot for Texas Tech, I'm a little more interested in their prices. Arkansas with, the rotation that they run, they're going to distribute the usage a little more evenly than some other teams on this slate. So I think maybe one Arkansas piece max.
It really is going to be fascinating. Just looking at, KenPom and the tempos, Arkansas is 17th. Texas Tech is 315th. So, both teams want to push that pace at their own speed. I think that Arkansas ultimately will win out in both the game and the tempo. And that is where I leave. I'm still stunned. I thought, 2.5, 3 the other way was where this was going to open. And that was just not the case. So we will see. Good matchup there. And now we get to the last game in the South region. The winner of Arkansas and Texas Tech will take on the winner of this is a sentence I never thought I would have to say, of number 15 seed Oral Roberts against the 7 seed Florida Gators. 148.5 total. Oral Roberts is 8.5. I've seen it at 9-point dogs. Let's get into it. So you were all over Oral Roberts. You thought that they could hang in the game, possibly steal it. You got the best version of them. Took them to overtime, got it done. Ohio State had their chances, but to tell you the truth, I thought Oral Roberts actually could have won the game a little more comfortably. What do you make of this team? I mean, everybody is incredibly impressed. Let's start there.
Yeah, Oral Roberts, we were talking on Friday about how dangerous this team was because of how well they shoot the ball. And they're a team like Colorado where they're extremely secure. They're the best free throw shooting team in the country. So when it comes down to it and these games are tight, Oral Roberts is a team you really like in those situations. The thing about this matchup against Florida, they don't match up quite as well. Ohio State's defense, they're weaker on the perimeter guarding threes. Florida's actually a little weaker in the interior. They basically have Colin Castleton, and he's not a great defender himself. And outside of that, they just rotate forwards. So this matchup, I think, is a little bit more difficult for Oral Roberts. When I ran my model and got the line myself, it had Florida -10, and we've seen this. It opened around -6, -7, and Florida's taken a ton of steam right away. So I think I'm going to stay away from this game in the betting markets. But as far as DFS goes, you have two teams that play with an above average pace. The total's already 148. And I actually think the over might be the best bet in this particular game.
So I'm taking a different approach. I really like Oral Roberts in the game. And I don't think that Florida's any good. And the other thing, listen, it's one game, but we know that Oral Roberts shoots a ton of threes. They took 35 against Ohio State, but they shot just 31%, which is actually down from their season average. From the line, they were good. They were 77%. That's slightly down, though, from their season average. They only had 6 turnovers. That's why they won the game, and that's going to be tough to replicate. But they've got the two-headed monster. They're unbelievable, and I do think that they're going to find good opportunities to shoot the ball here. Let's dive into the DFS side of it. They've got, a player at 9,200, player at 8,100, both of them 29 and 30 points in the last game. Where do you stand on these top end options for Oral Roberts?
Yeah, I love them both. And in the betting markets, it's not that I don't like Oral Roberts. It's just more of a stay away for me. I think a more efficient line, but Oral Roberts is a dangerous team, so I can't fault you if you want to take them against the spread. But you're absolutely right about DFS. You have most of the usage flowing through just two guys, and Max Abmas play every single minute, and Kevin Obanor, he'll play every single minute. Obanor has a little bit better matchup here just against Florida's interior, but both of these guys just extremely use. Abmas, 23% usage rate, taking 29% of the shots. Obanor's up at 24% too. I think you can save a little money by going to Obanor, but ultimately I can't fault you for taking either of these players in this spot. I even think you could take some value with Oral Roberts because of their narrow distribution of minutes. So a guy like Carlos Jurgens at 5,100, he'll also play every single minute, and he's a very strong peripheral player. So 19% rebound rate for him last 3, 27% assist rate. I think you could even play 2 Oral Roberts players just because of the way they interact.
Did you know his name was A. Smith, or were you surprised when they said it like that?
My friend Steve got on me for our last stream mispronouncing it. I did not know.
I did not. I know. I called him Abmas. It was very bad. Leading scorer in the country, deserves better. Sorry, Max, friend of the show. Hope you're watching. And if you are, hit that like button, my friend. Good luck today. Like I said, I think this, I can't believe it. I'm waiting, just for the record, because this is a spot you mentioned. All the money is coming in on Florida. Keep it going. Go ahead. I'll take as many points as I can get. I agree with Jurgens. They're going to shoot. They do. This is what I like about Oral Roberts. They know who they are. They are going to do what they do. They're going to shoot a ton of threes. If they get to the line, they're going to make their free throws. And if Florida finds a way to handle that, they'll probably win the game. But I'm not so sure of that. It's probably a product that I thought Virginia Tech really should have won the first round game. Another overtime, as we've seen. Trey Mann was fine, logged 44 minutes, but kind of a pedestrian line, 14, 4, and 3. He is up at 8K here. I think this is a better environment for him, no doubt. But is this kind of a buy low spot getting a $500 price dip?
Man rides and dies with that crazy shot rate. He's taking 25.5% of the shots. I think that's really how he gets it done. If he's hitting them, he's going to be a great GPP play. If not, he's potentially going to bust your lineup. But this Florida team has the highest implied team total on the slate, so we need to take a look at them to some degree. For that reason, I think Trey Mann is somebody we should at least consider. I ultimately find myself siding with a couple other studs in this range, but Trey Mann, you absolutely cannot knock his usage rate right now.
What do you feel about, inside with the bigs in terms of Castleton? Now, one thing I want to ask you right off the top, he was great. No doubt about it. 19 points, 14 boards, did everything, contributed, played 43 minutes. Omar Payne was pseudo suspended by Mike White, I guess. He did not play in the game. Do you think that matters at all in terms of the rotation and in terms of the minutes for a guy like Castleton, or is that just a non-issue?
Castleton played the season high minutes, not just because of overtime either. This guy rarely logs 30 minutes. Florida is just a little weird with their rotation, and sometimes Castleton plays 22 minutes, sometimes he plays 29. There doesn't really seem to be a rhyme or reason to it. I think they do need him in the tournament, and we did see the minutes narrow a little bit for Florida. As far as Omar Payne goes, I think that is more of the secondary option for Florida. If he plays, I think it's more of a knock on guys like DeRougy than it will be to Castleton.
And then on the other guys, just to round up the end of Florida, Appleby took a vicious cut, but I believe he's good to go. He had to get stitches and he wasn't available late in the game. And then you've got Scottie Lewis, who's sub 5K. He's going to log some minutes. Is that a salary relief option in this spot?
I think they both are. So with Scottie Lewis, he's typically coming off the bench. You'll see him play around 25 minutes, which is a pretty secure role already. If Appleby plays limited minutes for whatever reason, you're looking at an expanded role for Lewis, so I like him. But then at the same time, Appleby, he's typically playing between 25 to 30 minutes as well. He's mainly a shooter, but just a little worried about the cut. Not sure if that limits his minutes whatsoever. And then you have a guy like Noah Locke, who also plays 25 to 30 minutes, which is kind of the case with all these ancillary Florida guards. Noah Locke is primarily just going to be a spot-up shooter, but he's also very cheap. So I actually don't hate taking a look at one of these sub 5K Florida guards.
Yeah, like you said, highest implied total on the slate. It is a good environment, and they are sizable favorites. I will give them credit. One last thing I'll say, just to bolster up these Eagles, Florida 261st in the country in fouls per game. That's not a totally egregious number, but it's not great. And I do think that if you start fouling in a game like this with a lot of possessions, Oral Roberts will kill you. The way they shoot, we saw it late in the game. I really worry about that for them. And if they take 35 more, I think they shoot at a better clip, and Florida could be in trouble in the spot. I'm not a believer in the Gators at all. Anything else from this pod, the first four matchups that we've talked about?
I don't think so. I think we hit on it. My favorite game environment is actually this Florida Oral Roberts one. And like you said, Oral Roberts, if they're shooting free throws, they're the best free throw shooting team in the country. That's not going to be a recipe for success for Florida.
No, and I think we're going to see that. All right, real quick, before we get to the bottom four, I do want to say, if you haven't, it is time to sign up for this package. It's not too late. You've missed the first round. There's plenty of basketball to go around. The description is right there, right in the sign up link for our package. $29.95. You get the projections that Matt's been doing. We've seen some really good screenshots already. Very impressive stuff. I've been in Slack dropping some bets. It's been working out. Knock on wood. We're going to keep that going. And we just have a great community in there. It's worth the price of admission to be part of the family. We'd love to have you guys in there. So hop on in. $29.95 is certainly worth it. And we'll see you guys there. Let's get to the bottom half of this right side of the bracket. This is the game that is the first game. I tried to start with this game because I don't know what I'm doing, but now it's actually the right time as I see. We've got Loyola, we've got Illinois. Listen, 7.5 point spread, that feels right to me. 133.5 total. I think a lot of people, I know you and me when the bracket came out said, man, Georgia Tech and Illinois is going to be a fantastic game. Unfortunately, Moses Wright was unable to play, and I do think that made the difference. But credit to Loyola, they're a great team. The question is, are they this good? Because this is a totally different test against a team that they rarely, if ever, have seen during the regular season.
Yeah, Loyola just hasn't played the same competition that Illinois has. Illinois will be far and away the best team this Loyola team has faced all season long. So just a huge talent gap here. It's also a very tough stylistic matchup for guys like Krutwig. He's going to have to do battle with Kofi Coburn on the interior. And Krutwig, he's a big guy. He weighs about 260 pounds. But if you've seen Kofi Coburn, he's an absolute monster. And he won't get bodied like some of the bigs on Georgia Tech did without Moses Wright. So I bet Illinois -7 immediately. It's now moved to 7.5. Still comfortable laying the points there. If it gets any further, I maybe would look towards just leaving the game alone because Loyola plays very slow. They're going to limit possessions for Illinois, who plays, on the other hand, with pretty good pace. But I think when you're laying a lot of points in a game that has just a 134 total, I'm probably not going to take it. But I already hold Illinois -7, just not looking at it if it gets too much further in that direction.
Yeah, Loyola 342nd in tempo in the country, one of the best defenses in the country, one of the best coaches in the country. Tough combination for Illinois, but they have things that you can't really replicate. Yeah, that's a bannable comment in chat by Jordan. DePaul is down there with the real bad teams, SIU, Edwardsville, and co. That's neither here nor there. Talk about AO, though. 9,500, is it as simple as, listen, great player, but you just can't pay that in a matchup like this?
I think you can pay for AO. He has triple-double upside. It's a more difficult matchup for him, certainly, but Illinois' team total is still north of 70 points. I was really surprised to see Dosunmu play 33 minutes in their cupcake matchup against Drexel, but he did. So Dosunmu is literally involved everywhere. And for a guard, he rebounds really well. He's currently soaking up 23% of those last three, 34% of the assists, and 25% of the shots. Dosunmu, as far as contrarian studs, I think he still carries a little bit of ownership, but at the same time, I can never fault you for paying him, even in this matchup.
Is there anyone else? I mean, we've talked about the main guys, the main contributors, but this isn't certainly when you're this good, you're going to have other guys, particularly in the backcourt, Frazier, Williams, these types. Their price is more than reasonable. Is there enough to go around in a game environment like this where they could become pertinent plays?
Illinois runs an 8-man rotation, and it's kind of difficult in the periphery. You basically see Dosunmu play every minute, and then Trent Frazier plays every minute. Frazier is basically just a spot-up shooter. He has a decent assist rate this year. 5,200, that's the player I probably look to if I'm playing somebody cheaper. And then Kofi Coburn's always in elite GPP play, often limited because of fouls. Coburn's very involved with shots and rebounds, not as much of a peripheral player, so he really needs his minutes in order to hit his ceiling. Outside of those three, you have Curbelo, who's typically coming off the bench as the sixth man, but pretty secure minutes. I was just surprised to see his price pop up to 6,400, which isn't something I love. From there, the other four players they rotate in are all going to see between 15 to 22-ish minutes, which I think limits the upside in this matchup.
How do you, kind of transitioning over to Loyola, how do you see the matchup inside going with Krutwig? Because he's such a dynamic big. I mean, is that kind of a wash? Do you think it could cause some problems if he's really doing some things that are atypical of a big man? I mean, we wanted to see Moses Wright versus him, and now we certainly get the big man with Illinois against him.
Yeah, I thought Moses would limit Krutwig a little bit, and Krutwig takes up such a large usage rate for this team. I think it's going to be a really important factor to this game, which is why I like Illinois against the spread. But Krutwig also scores from all over the floor, so he does have a little bit of GPP upside for that reason. Loyola Illinois is a low team total, but Krutwig, he'll play around 30 to 35 minutes, assuming he's not in foul trouble, 19% usage rate. He's north of 20% of the shots and the rebounds last three. So he's used enough, I think, to take a look at, but he's not somebody I personally will be playing today.
So looking at their first round game, and listen, it's one game, but Lucas Williamson was absolutely phenomenal. I watched that game. He was fantastic, efficient game from the floor, contributed in every area, and his price really hasn't adjusted. He's at 5,400 now. Do you think we see more of the same? I know it's a step up, but is he the non-Krutwig option that you would go to for the Ramblers?
I think he would be the guy. His price is fine. He'll play over 30 minutes, assuming he's not in any sort of issues. But again, his rates are all just capped because of the presence of Krutwig. Plus the low possessions we're projecting here, a pretty bad environment against Illinois' good defense. I'm not sure I'm playing any of the overall ancillary players on Loyola.
Tough game. Like I said, I really want to watch it. I don't know if I will bet it. And certainly the environment, it's just going to be a hard fought one. I think ultimately, I mean, they better. This is my team to win it. Illinois, I think, will get it done. But tough matchup, great game. Let's keep it going. This is a weird one. We've got Oregon State and Oklahoma State. Not a matchup that I think a lot of people expected. The 12 versus the 4, they walloped Tennessee. They were clearly the better team. We saw that time and time again. Oklahoma State took what I thought was a really good test. Liberty is a scrappy, tough team, similar to Loyola in a lot of ways, and they got it done, as they seemingly are able to do. It's a 6-point spread here with the Cowboys favored, 141 total. Let's start with the Beavers, though, because this is a team I don't think a lot of people know much about. And when you shoot like that, I guess we should know about them. Ethan Thompson and co were on fire. What do you make of this team? Honestly, I really don't know how good they are at this point.
They've been on fire for a while now. So in the Pac-12 tournament, this is something we talked about against Tennessee. They were shooting 10% above their season average from three, and they've continued to do so even in their most recent game against Tennessee. And I mean, you looked at players like Ethan Thompson hitting a bunch of threes. He's shooting 32% from three on the season. So he's definitely not a strong three-point shooter, at least this season. Jared Lucas, their other three-point shooter, he's actually shooting 40%, so I'll give him some credit. But against Oklahoma State, you have a team with a pretty stifling defense, and it's a defense that's only improved, a team that played with a bunch of injuries throughout the regular season. So I'm not sure their efficiency metrics even truly reflect how good this defense is. Strong against guards and strong in the interior with some of the depth they were able to cultivate through the season. So I like Oklahoma State. I think if you can get this at 6, it's still a pretty strong line.
Oregon State, just to speak into the numbers, for the year, shoots 35.1% from three. That's a pretty good number. They're 101st in the country. Over the last 3 games, they're shooting 46.8% from three, which is, that's Monstars territory. If they can keep that up, they'll be winning it all. That's not going to happen for obvious reasons. So let's go to the other side of the ball here with Oklahoma State. You mentioned Cade Cunningham. They've got a lot of players. He was not good against Liberty. He got it done late, but he was just 3 of 14 from the field. Is it I don't want to say a buy low spot because he's still 9,800, but it clearly, going against Liberty's defense and Liberty's pace is never a good spot. Is this a better spot for him?
A slightly better spot. Oregon State just doesn't have the defense that Liberty does. Oregon State also plays slow, not quite to the degree that Liberty does, but it's exactly what you said. Paying $9,800 for Cade, when even you have the Sumu at $9,500, you have Asmus right below him, and even some other players in the 8K range that I just like, not quite as much as Cade, but I think the opportunity cost is enough to warrant a fade.
When you look at the rest of this team, because they're a team that honestly, we talked about this a little, it was hard to get a read because they've had so many ins and outs with the offense. Guys were hurt. Likely is back, Anderson, Boone, and it developed depth, as you pointed out, and it is true. But now seeing all of them, you have a bunch of 6 and 5K options. Is there one guy that stands out as that next option and at a more playable price point?
I think if you're looking to the secondary options, Avery Anderson's a decent consideration. He has a 20% shot rate last 3, and that hasn't come at the expense of Cade. Cade's still shooting the ball 30% of the time. Pretty good peripherals for Anderson, so I think he's firmly in play. I wouldn't say he's underpriced by any means, but appropriate there. And then you saw a little bit of a usage change with Caleb Boone and Matthew Alexander Moncrief. They both play in the front court here. So Caleb Boone's been playing about 25 minutes a game, and then last game, he drops down to 12 with Matthew Alexander Moncrief playing 35. So Moncrief here draws the better matchup. Oregon State's weak inside. They rank 268 interior defense. Moncrief has size. He now has consistent minutes, and he's a fantastic rebounder. So at his price, I think he's a much better play.
So ultimately with this game, you've kind of alluded to maybe looking to Oklahoma State. Do you think the advantage for them particularly is in the front court and we see some regression maybe with the threes and we call it a day here?
I do think that's the case. My model put this at Oklahoma State -5, so I don't have any tickets on the game right now, but it's something that I've been looking at a lot. Do you have any bets in this game?
I don't. I don't know what to make because Oregon State is a team that I really do respect. And I will say, not that this is the end-all be-all, but clearly the Pac-12 is a lot better than people realized. Colorado looked fantastic. UCLA looked good. Oregon State looked good. Oregon was so good they didn't even have to play. Like this.
How about USC? Ooh.
USC is gonna do some damage. I don't think.
I bet them already tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, a little preview for the show. You come on by tomorrow, everybody, and we'll see what they can muster up. They're a dangerous team. There's no doubt about it. Mobley looked very good, but I think this is a situation I may look for some reason. I feel like Oklahoma State, and maybe this is in my head, to be honest, that they start slow a lot. I may look to pick up a ticket here in the, -3, -4 range if they fall slightly behind right at the beginning. I've been doing that pretty successfully. Like Gonzaga yesterday, they're down like 4-2. You shaved off 4 points in that game. Not that it mattered because they won by about 90 points, but you can do that. The Zags almost hit 100. Anyway, anything else from this 12-4 matchup before we get to the final two games?
I don't think so. Oregon State's a tricky team. We didn't talk much about DFS for them, but I think it's pretty much just Ethan Thompson or bust. You have a good shot rate with Jared Lucas, but he's not doing as much in the periphery. I don't love a guy like Alice Day. He doesn't have enough minutes for me. And then the forwards all kind of rotate, but I think that's it.
All right, two left, chat. We're getting there. We'll probably have a lot of Syracuse Orange fans because they're everywhere. I tell you what, every third person I talk to in the world went to Syracuse. So we're about to get to your boys. 11.
My boys.
Not my boys either. I respect them. Watched some games in the Carrier Dome in my day, but 11 seed Syracuse, tough game. 4-point dogs against the 3 seed West Virginia. 147.5 though. Good game environment. I don't know what to make of the situation because I want to go to Syracuse's first game. I like San Diego State in that game, and I watched the game, and it was the game that I wanted. And San Diego State just couldn't make a three. They could not. And if you can't make threes against the zone, you have absolutely no chance. Did you watch that game? Is that what you saw? Or did you see something that Syracuse was doing defensively that caused that?
I watched part of the game. I just flipped between them all. So caught part of it. It was really an anomaly performance from San Diego State, who typically shoots very well from three. So I think you just got a floor game from the Aztecs, and then Syracuse capitalized. So I won't take anything away from Syracuse for their win, but they basically got one of the worst performances from San Diego State that we've seen all year. So Syracuse still isn't a team I'm buying moving forward.
Yeah, and just to add to it one more, not only was San Diego State unable to capitalize, and they're a good shooting team, Buddy Boeheim, he capitalized all right. 7 for 10 from three. He had 30 points. He's been shooting at an obscene clip, but his price has really come up. Are you going to pay nearly $8,000 for Buddy?
I won't be paying that price. Like you said, it's like his best shooting performance all year.
Yeah, ridiculous. What about the rest of Syracuse here? Because I do think they're going to have to put up some points in this. Is Dolezaj, Griffin? I mean, they've got guys. I just don't know exactly how good this team is.
They've expanded their rotation recently, making it a little more difficult to trust. But like you said, Boeheim will play every single minute. Then you'll have Dolezaj playing every single minute. He's more of a peripheral player and kind of just a spot up 3-point winger, but he has a decent assist rate. I just don't love his price on DraftKings specifically. On FanDuel at 5,800, he's much more palatable there. And then the other starter with consistent minutes is Quincy Gary, somebody I actually think is a pretty decent matchup on the interior against West Virginia. The thing is, West Virginia wants you to shoot threes, and they're very good at defending them. So I don't love Syracuse against the spread for that reason. But if you're looking for DFS, it's really those three on Syracuse. And from there, they've expanded their rotation. So Griffin's playing a reduced role, someone who played 35 minutes a game prior, but he's only played 12 and 15 in the last two. Then Garrard, Kaderi Richmond, even guys like Robert Braswell are all mixing in for minutes, which I don't love.
Yeah, that was the guy I wanted to actually talk about. Griffin is someone who, during the season, 30 plus minutes seemed more likely than not. 12 and 15 in those last two games. Does that takes him out of consideration for you?
Unless it's just big GPPs, yes.
On the other side, you spend half the show railing against Morehead State, and you didn't do much to change anyone's mind. West Virginia cruised past them by 17 points. Now they get a much different test. It's going to be interesting. Certainly Miles McBride has shown at times he can make some threes, but I don't equate West Virginia with a great shooting team. Maybe that's misguided, but what do you make of them going up against the zone?
I think they shoot the three fairly well. As a team, they're up at 39% from three, which is pretty good. McBride's above 40%. Like, they don't take a ton of threes, which I think is more of a factor here. McBride, he's just barely north of 100 threes. They'll have guys like Taz Sherman and Sean McNeil function as their peer shooters, but I like McBride a lot. I think he can win against the zone with his shooting if he does take more threes. And then Syracuse is also hurt by teams that are pretty good rebounding. And West Virginia has just a monster inside in Derek Culver. As long as he can stay out of foul trouble, he's one of the better offensive rebounders in the country. So I like the overall matchup for West Virginia a lot. I actually think this plays to the over, with West Virginia just being in a series of track meets down the stretch this year. And Syracuse can score a little bit, but it's pretty much McBride. You can take a look at Culver. And then if you need a value play, Sean McNeil, he's basically just going to be a shooter, but he's cheap enough to look at.
Yeah, and he's had some games, not recently, but I certainly watched my fair share of them, Sean McNeil at times can get crazy hot. And this is the type of environment, if he has some opportunities, he's going to get more because that's the way they play. Culver on the inside, I've always been impressed with him. Good player. Do you think that ultimately West Virginia kind of just wears them down and wins this game, or do you think that Cuse can keep it going?
I think that this game will be a little closer. When I ran my model and booked the line myself, it gave me West Virginia -2 and the total above 150. So my favorite bet here was the over just because of pace. Both teams are a little weaker on defense. You have West Virginia ranking 154 in defensive efficiency, Syracuse at 139, and then two offenses that are both top 60 in the country. So looking towards the over for bets.
There you go. And that obviously could produce on the DFS side of things. Another game that I'm not really in love with. Tough. I think West Virginia wins the game, but not really looking to take a play just yet. We'll see where it goes. All right, we've got one game left. Then we'll get to a recap of the favorite plays. We'll talk about a lock of the day. Then we'll bounce it out. But don't go anywhere. We've got shows on shows on shows. And that is why, in addition to hitting the like button, you should subscribe to the channel. We want to keep you guys informed. There's a ton of content coming on. You're certainly going to see me talking golf all week with the match play coming up. We've got more. I mean, we're going to have another show tomorrow with college basketball, the NBA guys. And then apparently baseball still exists. So we're going to have the team ready to go doing some things there. I won't be involved. I can't speak for Matt. Will you be involved?
With baseball?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge. Okay. Yeah. We're not. We stick in the college streets. That's how we roll. But after seeing this last game, it kind of makes me wish I stuck in the baseball streets because we've got Rutgers and we've got Houston. Not exactly the game that I've been dreaming of. The 10 seed Rutgers, credit to them. They got a tournament win taking on Houston, who is just, they kind of do what they do. 131.5 point total, 8-point spread. I mean, were you in, I don't know if you caught the game. I caught pieces of it. Clemson and Rutgers lived up to the hype in a bad way. It was as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that was a terrible game. It was a terrible game. But credit to the back end of the Big Ten. I mean, some of the Big Ten looked terrible, like Ohio State, and then a lot of other teams did perform. So got to give Rutgers at least some credit.
Yeah, no, got to give them some credit, no doubt. Then Maryland stepped up. I give those teams credit. Now they get a team with Houston that really, really will put some strain on them. They're just a balanced, tough team. They play very methodical. On a DFS side of things, does that make it tough for guys like Harper, for guys like Johnson, for guys like Young to really be in consideration?
Yes, I think so. Rutgers is not a good three-point shooting team. They're shooting 32%. Houston has an elite defense. The only real concern, I think, for Houston is the injury status of DeJon Jarreau. Only played a minute with a hip injury. I'm not really expecting to see him, and if he plays, I think it's probably in a limited capacity. Ultimately, this Houston team has considerable depth, so I don't think it matters a ton to the line or the spread, but for that reason, I haven't taken any bets. But to your point, in DFS for Rutgers, this is a spot I'm pretty much just avoiding.
On the other side, yeah, you mentioned Jarreau. Grimes is clearly the alpha, almost 9K, though. Is that just too much?
I think so. He's in the similar price tiers like Dosunmu and A. Smith. I would rather play those guys.
The guy that stood out to me, and I certainly, again, I don't know a ton about these teams with Houston here. It's not a team that I'm certainly sold on, but Sasser is a guy who his minutes are very stable. He takes good volume. He's a three-point shooter. Doesn't contribute really in the other areas, but it's a pretty reliable tag and a fair tag. At 61, where does he fall to you versus guys like Gorham, versus White, and the other Houston Cougars?
I like Sasser's price a lot today, and I think there is some upside with peripherals if Jarreau is out. Jarreau is more of a peripheral player. Like you said, Sasser's basically a shooter, but he's taking 22% of the shots, which is pretty good. And overall, his assist rate on the year is 14.5%, which isn't great, but I think it's fine enough to at least give you that upside you're looking for.
Betting the game? Question mark.
I have no bets in the game right now.
Me neither. And I don't know if I will. I can't see myself backing Rutgers, and that kind of makes it tough to look to maybe the over. I could see Houston pushing it a little. Not that they push the tempo, but just getting out and being efficient and forcing Rutgers to put up some points in an ugly game. Anything else on the DFS side of things, or can we kind of go to a roundup here?
I think you could maybe look to Tremont Mack as a value play on Houston, assuming that Jarreau sits. Mack played 24 minutes in their most recent game against Cleveland State. So I think there's upside for more. Houston won that game by 31 points. But I think Mack is the direct beneficiary of a Jarreau injury. So that's just something to watch.
So I just want to ask you quickly here about, he got hurt in the game? against
Yes.
Cleveland State? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
he played 1 minute. It happened instantly.
Okay. So I'm interested. I mean, we don't know the answer to this. I wonder if it wasn't Cleveland State. When when you have the game in hand, you don't really need to put him back in. I wonder exactly where he's at. I guess we will find out today.
Yeah, so the most recent report on Giroux said he will attempt to give it a go, which doesn't really give you clarity on his minutes, but at least it seems that he should try to be out there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to monitor. That is the perfect reason to follow Matt_Gajewski on Twitter, at JazzRazDFS on Twitter, and of course the home account with Awesemo _DFS. All right, a couple questions from Premium Slack, Jets World, friend of the show. Best 1 or 2 top plays and value plays on FanDuel today. Is there anything that stands out for you there?
Yeah, Sasser's a good value play over there for sure if you just want to talk Houston guys. And then I think you could look to someone like JD Note, who sits at 5,300 on FanDuel, a pretty egregiously low price tag. FanDuel overall just a little softer with their pricing tiers. Those are the 2 main ones, I would say.
Got it. Like it. All right. I'll go Arkansas. We need to get on that bandwagon. Couple other questions. Any cheap value guys where they're going to take a shot on? We kind of just talked about that. Is there anyone, I mean, you had talked about Grand Canyon's big yesterday. Is there anyone in that price range today where you're really looking to pay down?
I don't think there's anyone below 4K.
Okay. And I think Frayer, I don't have it in front of me. I think he was like 37 or 38 yesterday.
Yeah, I think he was 36. He was really cheap.
Yeah, there you go. They played hard, by the way. They just not good enough to take down an Iowa team. But shout out to the Antelopes. All right, let's get to the final thing, and then we're going to bounce on out of here. But again, we've got so many shows coming up, so stay tuned. If you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Slack. You're going to be seeing a lot of us with this tournament just getting started. But certainly, I'll be honest, and it's easy to say this now, yesterday, I think we were both very confident that the Colorado spread was just not right. Simple as that. And McKinley Wright showed that it was just an absolute demolition. Today, we only have 8 games. These are tougher. Is there one game for you that stands out above the others?
I think my favorite bet overall today, I mean, I love Illinois, but I think the Baylor bet is a little bit better against Wisconsin.
And I'm going to stick with my guns here. I really believe that Oral Roberts and Florida is a competitive game. I do not think that should be 9 points. This team shoots the ball well enough that they're going to cause problems. And Florida is not a team that I've been impressed with. They got it done and credit against Virginia Tech, but I think Oral Roberts pushes them again. And if Oral Roberts won this game, I would not be shocked. And it's not just a product of them, of course, beating Ohio State. It's just the way they play, and Florida not being a team that I'm super impressed with. One other interesting question before we get out of here, DJ in chat asked, with a survivor pool pick, Florida is going to be very chalky. I mean, how do you look at things like that? Do you look to take a higher seed and burn them, or do you stay somewhat aggressive with a Florida type team?
Yeah, I look to teams that maybe are a little bit higher seeded but have less staying power. So my favorite team in the first round yesterday was Iowa. I think teams that kind of fit this mold today might be like a Houston, who has a potential matchup against Illinois down the road. I'm certainly not looking at a team like Loyola, and I think Illinois is very good, so I wouldn't look at them either. But another team potentially that you could use in this mold might be like a West Virginia. Those 2 teams I think will cannibalize each other, Houston and West Virginia, soon. So that's more where I'm looking today specifically. I think Oral Roberts is live, like you said. So they're not a team I really want to bet against, especially in Survivor.
Yeah, and I think with the masses going there, I'll echo, for me, it would be Houston, particularly because I don't think they're that good, but they should beat Rutgers. I'll throw out one more. Oklahoma State, I think, will win the game today, and they will match up probably with Illinois in the next round. So it's a good way, you can get rid of them if they survive, and you're not going to lose much, because clearly I think the road would end. Razorbacks money line, I think we're all in tune with that on this show. But yeah, for Oklahoma State, that's one that I'll throw out there with Houston. But any final thoughts here before we bounce out of here on a lovely Sunday?
I don't think so. I love Baylor, love Illinois, so a couple favorites there. Otherwise, I like the over in the Oral Roberts game, but just really excited for another slate of games, and I can't wait to do tomorrow's with you, man.
Words to live by. I'm with you. We're going to have a bunch of fun. I'll be in Slack all day hanging out, dropping my bets there. I have a free article posted about the Oral Roberts game, so you can get that. And one last shout out to our friends at Monkey Knife Fight and to the package. Sign on up. The description right there, right below the video here on YouTube. You can click that. You can sign right up. Be part of the community. We'd love to have you, as Nightbot does it for us. Look at that. What a great way to end the show. So we're going to bounce on out of here. Hit the like button on your way out. Good luck, everyone. Thanks again, chat. You guys make this show so much fun, and we have a blast doing it. And we will see you guys same time, same place tomorrow.